enterprise designed to destroy your job, steal your prosperity, and rob your kids of a future. It's a hardcore, leftist, eco-horror show replete with quasi-fascism. I spoke a couple of weeks ago here about the disturbing trend among many of the world's left-wing elites to increasingly conflate COVID-19 with climate change, with many going so far as to suggest that all the measures applied to the coronavirus, the lockdowns, the destruction of businesses, the suppression of dissent, curfews, strong-arm police tactics, should become the new normal for dealing with climate change. And indeed, that is precisely what the next World Economic Forum is planning to do, to convince governments, with the help of big business and big tech, to bring about something deeply, deeply sinister called the Great Reset. The what? Precisely, it sounds kind of crazy enough, but it is a program designed to strip us of all our fundamental democratic rights in favour of a new form of society as dictated by the elites. First of all, here's a bit of the official promo ad for the Great Reset. How lovely. As someone who made ads for many years for a living, let me tell you that that is just about as cliched and vomit-inducing as the most inane corporate ad can possibly be. But let me deconstruct it for you. In a nutshell, this promo is saying that all the very worst things in the world, from the coronavirus to bushfires, to riots, to pollution, to poverty, are somehow linked. Then it is claiming that they can magically disappear, literally at the push of a button. And just like that, everything in the world is made right and pure again. The Great Reset. What could be simpler?
The World Economic Forum in January 21, which will serve as a global summit devoted to the Great Reset. This summit will bring the decision makers physically to Davos, but it will be interconnected with the virtual twin summit, driven by the young generation, our global shapers. They will integrate over 400 hubs into the dialogue of Davos and ensure that the Global Reset Initiative is really forward-looking and takes into account the voices of all who are left behind.
Now, put aside for the moment that that bloke looks like he's auditioning for the head of Smersh in the next James Bond movie. He is, in fact, Klaus Schwab, the founder and head of the World Economic Forum. He is a total whack job, in my opinion, and I'll get into that in a second. He's a big fan of drones, algorithms, and the Chinese Communist Party, and he believes there's a fourth industrial revolution underway that is changing what it means to be human. And he peddles this sicko fantasy that humans and machines will somehow merge in his green utopia. Bonkers, like I said, but this lunatic has some very, very powerful friends determined to push the Great Reset button along with him.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system.
We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. So we must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play.
Now is the time to think what history would say about this crisis. What is it that would make it so that history would look at this crisis as the great opportunity for reset?
The Great Reset is a welcome recognition that this human tragedy must be a wake-up call. It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate and rebalance our world. Rebalancing investment, harnessing science and technology, and advancing the transition to net zero emissions, all elements of the Great Reset, are fundamental to building the future we need.
Ah, yes, net zero emissions, the great climate cult mantra. The Prince of Wales, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations, all determined to redesign and reimagine the entire world. What it means to be human, how money works, how political will can be enforced. And here are just a few other tasty tidbits scheduled for the Great Reset.
We had already income inequality that was fueling income, race, gender inequality. We have a climate emergency, which we can't walk away from. There's no doubt that the very survival of the human race requires us to act.
Any recovery stimulus should have green conditions attached to it. Energy prices should reflect real costs.
You need private sector capital, private sector ingenuity, private sector technology, and private sector capabilities to come to the party. You need enormous trust between the private sector and the public sector for this to actually work.
We have to change our economy dramatically in the next 20 or 30 years, and the next 10 years is absolutely decisive.
The recovery has to be greener than any of the previous recoveries. And in order to do that, we need to ensure that the stimulus package, including fiscal and monetary, are much greener than they were before.
Prince Charles insists all the levers at our disposal must be used to enforce the Great Reset. How on earth that one sentence alone does not disqualify Charles from ever succeeding to the throne is beyond me. He is now not only fully immersed in hardcore left-wing eco-politics, he is advocating some bizarre form of eco-fascism. The Queen must step in and insist he have nothing further to do with this freak show. After all, we are currently seeing in Victoria just what it looks like when all the levers at our disposal are being used to enforce the COVID-19 restrictions, which include curfews, lockdowns, enforced mask wearing, shutting down of businesses, making you stay within 5 kilometres of your own home, not visiting the dying rellos, and on and on. Remember, it's not me linking COVID to climate change. It is these lunatics, including Charles and the United Nations and the IMF, who want to replicate the global response to COVID and repurpose it for climate change, to enforce zero net emissions. Just to remind you, this bloke Schwab is the kingpin of the World Economic Forum, the chief body that wants a globalised world with a partnership between governments and big business, globalisation that basically runs the show. In this week's Spectator magazine, Morris Newman writes, already Professor Schwab and his colleagues have started mobilising vast networks of left-wing activists. Those who scoffed at claims that climate change was a stalking horse for a new world order should think again. That reality is now in full view. Intense